After the Seltos, Carnival and the Sonet, Kia is ready with its fourth product for the Indian market, and this car right here is it. This here is the Kia Carens 3-row SUV/MPV. Carens, the name, symbolizes car and renaissance, but the 3-row SUV space in the recent past has seen a lot of traction courtesy some very formidable players. But Kia Carens is looking to make its own unique identity in this space. What does this car have on offer? Looks, space, features, and of course the drive. We're taking a closer look at each of these four factors in this episode. I'm Shubhadeep, this is HT Auto. Now the Carens is an India-specific model, so it's not so much coming to India as it's going to be here in the country before it moves to other markets across the world. Perhaps that's the reason, or maybe for other reasons, the Carens gets a very unique, very distinct styling element, especially when you compare it to the likes of Seltos and the Sonet. So the typical tiger nose grille is missing. Instead, what you get is a digital front radiator and a very clean front nose profile of this vehicle. I particularly like the LED DRLs and the 3 square LED headlight units that you see right here. Being a Kia, of course, there is a whole lot of chrome as well, so you get a chrome line right here. And while there is even more prominent chrome on the front lip, I personally am not too keen with the jarrish, shiny element of this particular strip. The Carens stands on 16-inch alloy wheels. The dual-toned treatment to the alloy design makes it a little more sporty than it otherwise is on the whole. There is a lot of ground clearance that this car enjoys, and the window area on the side, including the rear quarter glass, is pretty impressive. There is chrome on the window line here, but thankfully it's not overdone, so it's not surrounding the entire window line here. Overall, the appeal is of an MPV. Remember, this car is more of a cross between an MPV and an SUV than an all-out SUV. But what's happening on the rear? Let's take a look. Now at the rear, the LED treatment continues on the tail lights, and you also get the same chrome garnish on the rear bumper, which personally I'm not a fan of. But overall, the profile of this vehicle is simple yet sophisticated, and it's clean. So you get the Kia logo here, the Carens badge, and the automatic transmission that this here is. Now remember, this is a 3-row SUV/MPV, so how much space does the boot have on offer when all the 3-row seats are up? So there is about 100 liters of space, so that's a little less than what the Alcazar offers, but a little more than what the Safari has on offer. With all 3-row seats up, there is 100 liters of boot space. Topple down the last row seats and the boot space opens up to a mammoth 490 liters. That's more than even the Seltos. Of course, you also have the option of tumbling down the second row seats for even more luggage space. That is, of course, if there is only a driver and a front occupant. But does the space mean that there is space or hardly any for the third row passengers? For that, we'll have to step inside. Now in 3-row vehicles, I usually keep my expectations very low when it comes to the last row space and comfort. But one thing in the Carens is very evident, that is how easy it is to get in and out of this vehicle. Just a press of a button and there is a whole lot of room for you to get in. Now as long as the second row seats are not pulled all the way back, I'm very impressed with how much knee room I have. Of course, I am seated in an upright position, and unfortunately the backrest is very straight, so it's not very comfortable and there is no way I can recline it. But other than that, this place isn't all that bad. There is a fair amount of space, and passengers at the rear won't be complaining all that much. There are dedicated points for charging your phone, there are dedicated cup holders and dedicated rear AC vents as well. You also get 2 lights for reading perhaps on long journeys. Now the one-touch tumble feature is on this part of the second row and not on this, so to fold this you'll have to do it the conventional way of pulling a lever and pushing the seat down. But once again, getting in and out from even this side is fairly easy. And now of course it's time to actually take a look at what the second row and the front row seats have on offer. Now the middle row seat is exactly how it was positioned when I was showing you the space on offer at the rear, which helps me to understand and conclude that there is still a whole lot of knee room that I have here, and the passengers at the rear are still comfortable. Of course, if there is no passenger at the rear, then you can push these seats back, but for now let me just show you how much space I have. There is decent amount of knee room. Leg room is a bit of a hit and miss, but then again there is decent amount of space for your feet. Another impressive feature is that there is ample amount of under thigh support, great headroom, and the shoulder room for 3 passengers perhaps should also be adequate. What helps the passenger in the middle is that there is hardly any floor hump, so there is space for him or her to keep his feet. The central console also doesn't jut back at all, and therefore provides more space for the middle row passenger to place his or her feet. Now speaking about the center console, you get a nice smart looking dial for the AC vents, you get 2 USB Type-C charging points and storage space underneath that. Now the middle row passengers can also make use of things which are rather conventional but great to have. This armrest with dedicated cup holders, you get a shade on the window here, and considering that this car has big windows, you won't really miss not having a panoramic sunroof. Yes, the Carens doesn't come with panoramic sunroof. Instead what you get is a conventional size sunroof. There is an air purification system here as well on the car, and you've seen this before in the Alcazar, but the left passenger in the middle row can make use of this tray which has a cup holder and some space where you can plonk your iPad or Android tablet device. There is a net here for storing knickknacks and more storage space in the lower portion of the front back seat. There is more storage on the doors as well, and overall the fit, feel and premium finish of this car is very evident in the middle row and the front row as well. Yes, there is use of hard plastics, but that frankly is expected in a car on this segment. The cabin of the Carens is actually at its best right up at the front. Being a Kia, this car is absolutely feature loaded. It comes with the high definition 10.25-inch main infotainment screen, and while it continues to be a fingerprint magnet, the screen itself is vivid, large, bright and really of a top quality, perhaps as good as an iPad or a top-end Android device. Underneath that are the dedicated AC vents which look really sleek and gel along with the dashboard layout very well. There is a piano black finish which again attracts some amount of fingerprint, but there is a design pattern on these which tend to camouflage those fingerprint marks. The front passenger and the driver can also make use of some other great features like dedicated space to plonk your cup or a change compartment for the driver. The steering wheel has mounted controls and it's flat bottomed with great quality leather. The central console layout is also well appointed. You get wireless charging for your phone, 12-volt charging point, Type-C charging point and a conventional USB type charging point as well. Now quite obviously the strength of any car is in how it drives, and especially so in a vehicle like this which is, well, primarily a people mover. You get the Carens in 3 engine options. You get the 1.4 turbo petrol, 1.5 petrol and the 1.5 diesel, which is what we're driving first up. This one is paired with the 6-speed automatic transmission, so let's see what this car is capable of. The Carens comes with 3 drive modes, so let's get that out of the way. I started in the eco mode, and power build-up does take some amount of time, some degree of effort. Switch to the normal mode and there is clearly a difference, and perhaps the normal mode is the one that you'll use for most purposes. You want some little bit of excitement, then of course there is that sport mode too, but hold your breath. The diesel engine isn't the most eager, isn't the most enthusiastic, and the Carens overall isn't the sportiest of 3-row SUV/MPVs that you would expect in the Indian market. Now, if an enthusiastic drive, sporty drive isn't your priority, then the Carens ticks quite a few right boxes. The ride quality is fantastic. In fact, the diesel engine is very, very refined. I can hardly hear it from under the hood. The noise isolation is also fantastic. We've driven this out on open roads and, well, the insulation is brilliant. The suspension also is for the most parts well done. It's slightly on the stiffer side, so you will feel the speed bumps if you aren't exactly cautious, but for most parts the suspension setup inside this car has held its own really well. The diesel engine inside this Carens is pretty steady, stable at mid-range speeds. When you want to get a move on though, it's only till the 2400 RPM mark that there is a little bit of sluggishness, but beyond that the power build-up over and above is pretty good. The steering on the Carens is very well weighted, so it's not light, it's not exactly nimble, but it does offer good feedback, and there is a decent level of precision when you're taking turns even at relatively high speeds. Now, three-row vehicles aren't really famed for the amount of control that they have on the body roll, but keeping that in mind, this car performs reasonably well. Now, don't get me wrong, the Carens is hardly a shabby performer. It performs really well on the counts of stability, triple-digit speeds, and its cornering that I've already mentioned. But one thing of note is that I've been alone driving this car, so a car full of passengers and loaded to the brim with luggage, especially on hilly roads, well, there is always the paddle shifters that can come to your rescue. I'm in fact very glad that Kia has once again decided to equip this car with paddle shifters. So for any of you who wants to opt for a practical car, Carens makes sense, but perhaps if you want a more enthusiastic drive, get the paddle shifters going. Well, at a time when many manufacturers are actually ditching the diesel, Hyundai and Kia are sticking around with it. In fact, if we go with the sales numbers of the Alcazar, there is a considerable demand for the diesel engine. And on that note, I think Kia has done a good job in opting for the diesel engine apart from the petrol that you get with the Carens as well. But we've spoken about the diesel and it's fairly good, but it's time now to switch to the petrol engine, and the one that we get is the petrol engine with the manual transmission option. The turbo petrol engine on the Carens is the one to go for sure, if you're looking for a more spirited drive. The difference is massively evident, especially because we're driving it after the diesel. The throttle response is near instant, and the car is nimble enough on its wheels to satiate part-time enthusiasts. What also helps is short stick shifts on the manual gearbox, which is typical of what you would find in the Hyundais and the Kias. The petrol engine is typically refined and gets a move on with a sense of purpose. So we started our day with the diesel Carens, and we're ending it, of course, with the petrol. Now, regardless of the powertrain that you choose, the Kia Carens makes good case for itself as a three-row vehicle. It is targeting buyers who have their priorities right and want large families to travel together. Will this car sway people away from the SUV authentic segment? Well, that remains to be seen. The 1.4 turbo petrol engine is great, space in the third row is great as well, and of course, the feature-packed car makes a solid case for itself in terms of those who want a car to be loaded with features. The diesel engine and the looks, well, that is a little less impressive. That's my take, but we would like to know what your take is about this car and the review. Do let us know. And before it gets any more freezing here in Delhi, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for watching.